thought of myself as a book nerd for as long as I can remember. But when I got to university, I somehow stopped reading for fun, and before I knew it, 5 years had passed and I had barely finished 3 or 4 fiction books during that whole time. But I had still kept on buying books, a hobby much easier to maintain, so I ended up with a huge stack of unread books. And determined to get out of this 5-year reading slump, I started this channel because I needed a little accountability to getting back into reading. And making my silly little doodles in my reading journal and sharing them with you has definitely helped me. But it's not the easiest advice, and it's also not the key advice I would give to anyone wanting to get back into reading. Even though I have taken breaks from BookTube, I haven't had a reading break for the past, I'd say, 2 years, and that is largely thanks to James Clear's Atomic Habits. I've had reading slumps where I read less, perhaps, but I have always continued to read, and in this video, I wanted to share with you how I've created my reading habits and stuck to them. So I'll be giving 9 tips for getting back into reading that are practical and easy to implement into your life, all inspired by Atomic Habits. Part 1. Make it easy. One of James Clear's laws to successfully creating new habits is to make it as easy as possible to adopt this habit into your life. And I have 4 tips to do this specifically for reading. The first is to take a book with you everywhere so you can swap your waiting time with reading. Imagine if you spend all those little 5 or 10 minutes or sometimes longer waiting, reading instead of scrolling through your phone. I started to carry around a book or my Kindle everywhere, even if I was not sure that I would actually need it or if there might not be much time. But now I never leave the house without a book anymore, and it's an easy way to read even if it's just for 10 minutes on the bus or if a friend shows up a bit late. And those 5 or 10 minutes each time may not seem like much, but they actually really add up, and otherwise you would probably just be mindlessly scrolling through your phone anyways. My second tip is to prime your home. My apartment is full of reminders to read. Books are everywhere, next to my laptop so that when I take a break from work, I pick it up instead of my phone. On my coffee table so that when I sit on the sofa, I think of reading rather than turning on the TV. And the most important one of all, on the pillow in my bed. In the morning when I make my bed, I put my book on the pillow. This way I would have to move it in order to go to sleep, making it impossible to not think about reading before going to sleep. And when I first tried to get back into reading, I found this to be the most effective way to get my reading done, just reading 1 chapter a night, which really built up over time. And this brings me to my next tip: start small. Reading that huge TBR list you probably have may seem overwhelming, and James Clear mentions a 2-minute rule, which we can easily swap for a 5-page rule or a 10-page rule. If you tell yourself that all you need to do is read 5 pages a day, it won't feel so overwhelming. You should pick an amount that sounds easy to you, to guarantee that you will do it. If you read just 5 pages a day, at the end of the month, you will have read 155 pages, which is a short book. And this is the essence of Atomic Habits, the aggregation of marginal gains. Improving by 1% isn't particularly notable, sometimes it isn't even noticeable, but it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. The difference a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. Because after 1 month, you will have read 155 pages, and after a year, that would be 1,860. But more likely, it will be more, because after reading 5 pages a day for a while, you will most likely start reading more and more pages as you get into this habit. Another important tip is book choice. I found it very useful to read books that I already knew that I loved, or from authors which I already knew I loved. While it was super tempting to read all the books I had been buying just based on what was popular, not all of those books were actually my cup of tea, and so some were really difficult to get into, which would be a bit frustrating at times. And When getting back into reading a couple of years ago, I thought I would be able to go straight back into classics because that's where I left off, but I found that it worked way better for me to read John Green and other young adult books. I did a lot of rereads of old favorites, and these books really helped me to get through it. I also read a lot of short books because it felt like a little accomplishment every time I finished a book, and I think what I'm trying to say is that read whatever you want, whether that's classics or steamy romance or young adult fantasy. Read what makes you excited to read. You can always broaden your genres later if that's what you want. And don't be afraid to DNF. If you're not enjoying a book, move on to the next one. Maybe you can return to it another time. Part 2 is on making it hard. For every new habit you want to create, there is probably an old habit that you want to get rid of or that stands in your way of achieving this new habit. So whatever you are doing instead of reading, whether that's watching Netflix or scrolling through Instagram, watching Reels for hours, or playing Candy Crush, find a way to make it hard instead of as easy as they are now to reach. Remove the apps you know you're addicted to from your homepage, or completely if you're brave. Turn off your notifications, put your phone on Do Not Disturb when you're trying to read. Log out of your Netflix account each time so you have to log back in every time. Unplug your TV. Make the hurdle just a little bigger to do the thing you do instead of reading. And if there are things that you don't want to completely cut off, you just want a little less of it so you can read, then you can try to habit stack. Pair the new reading habit you want with the current habit that you already do anyways. If you usually watch Netflix when you get home from work or school, then make yourself read those 5 pages before you watch Netflix. And tie it back to making it easy. Leave your book over the remote so that you have to physically remove your book to turn on the TV. Whatever it takes to just nudge you in the direction of choosing reading over that other habit you do instead of reading. Part 3 are a few bonus tips. This is by no means an exhaustive list of how you can use Atomic Habits to read more. I highly recommend reading the book for yourself, not just to get back into reading, but in general to create those habits that you want in your life. I will be rereading it for the 3rd time in a couple of months to start of the year because I think it's brilliant. And maybe I will share a few more tips later as well. For now, I want to conclude by saying that while it is great to have reading goals, it's even more important to build systems, to build these habits. The author points out that goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So you can set your reading goal at 10 or 50 or 100 books for years, but if you don't change your reading habits, it will be difficult to achieve each year. You may do it 1 year, pure on willpower, but then completely lose track of it the next. But building systems will, over time, make these goals a lot more achievable and will make sure that it's sustainable because it is a change in your habits in your life. Another really interesting thing that James Clear says in this book is the process of building habits is actually the process of becoming yourself, which means that it is going to be a gradual change over time, but it also means that every action you take is going to be either a step towards becoming that person or against it. Every time you pick up a book, instead of turning to watch reels, you are sending a signal to yourself that you are a reader. This is how you spend your time. And the more this happens, the more you will come to believe it, and the more it will become reality. And the final tip I have is to surround yourself with other bookish people. The fact that you're here means that you have found your way to BookTube, which is great. And there's also a lot of fun ways to do this in person. I love going on reading dates with my friends, just sitting in a cafe, reading our separate books. If you don't have any reader friends, you can also check if there is a silent book club in your city. I recently found out about this and I can't wait to hopefully someday have this in the city that I live. It's essentially a meetup for people reading in silence together. It sounds like a lot of fun and a really nice way to meet other bookish people. If you have any tips for the people watching who are trying to get back into reading, please leave them in the comments below to share with everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did, that would really help me out. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.